Previously on the end of the line. 10 damn years in the locker. You know what that does to a man? So, do you really want to do this? You ain't getting away, TF. Not this time. He was playing around with some fancy deck of cards. They glowed funny. Tell me where. Then he saw the mass of sword-wielding thugs in his way. TF turned around to find Graves behind him. Suddenly, he wasn't so worried about Graves. A horde of pirates from the docks appeared behind Graves. The pirates on both sides were in no rush. They got them perfectly trapped. The bloodthirsty gang called the Hooks in front of them, and Gangplank's favorite gang, the Redcaps, behind them. TF started to be nervous, and listening to Graves' steps getting closer and closer didn't make him any calmer. The stubborn son of a bitch doesn't care about the mess we're in. It's amazing, really. Here we are yet again like all those years ago, deep in the muck, and he just won't listen. I wish I could tell him what really happened back then, but there's no point. He wouldn't believe me, not for a second. TF looked to the side of the bridge. There were ropes and chains hanging down. Then there was the ocean far, far below them. TF was afraid of heights, and so he staggered back to the middle of the bridge. He noticed Gangplank's black-sailed ship in the distance. He saw dozens small boats rowing towards them. It seemed like every living soul in Bilgewater was heading their way. I can't get through the Hooks, I can't get through the Caps, and I can't get through Graves' big-headedness. Only one way to go. I should have never came back to Bilgewater. Get the hell down from there, said Graves. TF took a deep breath. Tobias, Malcolm said. Step back. TF paused. He hasn't heard that name in a long time. Then he jumped from the bridge. Meanwhile, on the other side of Bilgewater, in a tavern called the Brazen Hydra, everyone was singing and having a good time, for there was a lady in the house. The crimson-haired siren, as they called her, made sure that no glass would run empty that night. Everyone's eyes were on her. A single smile was worth a fortune to them. Suddenly, the front door opened, and in stepped a plainly dressed man. Inconspicuous to a degree that only comes from years of practice. He walked to the bar and ordered a drink. This was a sign. "My fine fellows, I'm afraid I must take my leave," the lady said. The man responded with loud bellows of protest. Now, we've had our fun," she said. "But I have a busy night ahead, and you are all so very late to your posts." She hopped onto a table and she looked down with triumphant glee. "May the Mother Serpent grant us mercy for our sins." She smiled her most captivating smile, raised her large tankard to her lips, and downed her ale in one gulp. Especially the big ones. She wiped the beer from her mouth to a rapturous roar of approval and blew a kiss to all. Like servants before their queen, the room parted. The door was held for her by the harbor master. He bowed down, hoping to earn one last smile, but before he managed to look up, the lady was gone. She headed into the shadows of the town. Each step that lady took away from the tavern became more purposeful and sure-footed. Soon her light steps were gone, together with her smile and her look of wonder and joy. She revealed her true self. Behind her, the plainly dressed man emerged from the shadows. He started walking next to her with perfectly synchronized steps. "Is everything in place, Raven?" she asked. "Yes, Captain," he said. "You weren't spotted?" "No, the bay was free from the harbor master's eyes, and the ship was as good as empty." "And the boy?" "He played his part." "Good. We meet at the siren." And as she said that, Raven broke away and disappeared back into the shadows. The lady kept walking on her own. Everything was in motion. Now they just had to wait for the show to start. TF heard Graves' last roar before he dived off the bridge. There was no need to think about the fall or the bottomless sea beneath him. He was focused on something else. He almost screamed with joy as he caught the rope he was aiming for. But then it burned into his palm. He finally stopped after sliding to the end of the rope. He hanged in there for a moment, cursing. TF started thinking about jumping, but the water really wasn't his element, and so he started looking for another way out. Luckily for him, there was a pair of metal cables running from the bridge to the town. The cables were used to transport heavy buckets full of butchered sea monsters. TF smiled for a second. That was until he saw what was inside the bucket. I'm about to drop feet first into seething vat of rotting fish spleen. It took me months to earn the coin for my boots. Supple as gossamer and sturdy as tempered steel. They were crafted from the hide of an abyssal drake. There are fewer than 4 pairs in the world. Damn it. TF perfectly timed his jump and he landed in the middle of the bucket. At least my head's clean. All familiar gunshot. The safety cable exploded and the bucket started sliding down the line. It slammed into the stone platform at the loading docks and flipped on a side. TF struggled to get on his feet. He started shambling towards a small empty boat near the docks. Not even halfway there. Another shot tore a hole inside the boat. TF dropped to his knees. Graves stood behind him. Somehow he made his way down too. Not so charming now, are you? Are you ever gonna learn? TF said, rising to his feet. Every time I try to help you, Graves fired into the ground in front of him. If you just listen— Oh, I'm all done listening. The biggest score of our lives, and before I knew it, you were gone. Before you knew it, who told you? Another shot. I tried to get us out. The rest of us saw the job was going south, said TF. But you wouldn't back down. You never do. TF quickly readied another one of his cards. I told you then. All you had to do was to back me up. We would have gotten out clean and rich. But you ran, said Graves, stepping forward. He was lost in hatred. TF stood silent. Over Graves' shoulder, he noticed Gangplank's crewman with a loaded gun. Without thinking, TF flicked a card. It sliced toward Graves. Graves pulled the trigger. TF's card took down one of Gangplank's crewmen with a gun aiming at Graves. Behind TF, another crewman holding a knife fell to the ground. TF and Graves looked at each other, and they each said, old habits. Soon the crewmen were all around them. But that didn't stop Graves. He readied his shotgun, but he was out of ammo. He roared and ran at them. He managed to break one of the crewmen's nose with the butt of his gun, before the rest beated him to the ground. They grabbed TF from behind, pinning his arms. He saw Malcolm on the ground, blood dripping from his face. Suddenly, the chaos passed and everything went silent. Red-coated figure stepped through the crowd. Gangplank. He was holding an orange in one hand, slicing off its skin with a short carving knife. So tell me, boys, do you like Scrimshaw? In the next scene, TF and Graves are on the deck of Gangplank's ship. Strong punch in the face forces Graves to fall on his knees alongside TF. Handcuffs locked on his wrists. Any other man would be knocked out, but Graves was nothing more than dizzy. Come on now, son, you're doing it all wrong. The next punch came in even faster than the one before. Graves spitted out blood and teeth. He grinned. My old ma hits harder than you do, boy. And she's been dead and buried for 5 years now. Another hit. Enough, shouted Gangplank. After a few seconds, Graves could finally focus again. He noticed that Gangplank was wearing the dagger that TF stole. Twisted fate, huh? I heard you are good. And I've never been one to look down a good thief, Gangplank said, leaning down just inches from TF's face. But a good thief knows better than to steal from me. Then he looked at Graves. And you, if you'd been 2 shades smarter, you could have put that gun to work for me. But we're past that now. Gangplank stood up and turned his back to them. I'm not an unreasonable man. I don't expect folk to bend the knee. All I ask is a modicum of respect. Something you boys pissed all over. And that can't go unpunished. Do me a favor, said Graves. Kill him first. Gangplank chuckled. Then he nodded to one of his crewmen, who started ringing the ship's bell. Like a chain reaction, the whole city started ringing their bells. Drunks, sailors and shopkeepers started pouring onto the streets. Gangplank wanted an audience. Bilgewater's watching, boys, Gangplank said. Time to give him show. Bring out the Death's Daughter. The crew started cheering. An old cannon was pushed onto the deck. Graves looked at TF. His head was down, totally silent. They took his cards, once they found them all at least. They even took his hat. One of the crewmen in the crowd was wearing it. TF looked defeated. You're getting what you deserve, you son of a bitch, said Graves. TF stared back at Graves. There was still fire in him. I ain't proud how the things went. You left me to rot, Graves interrupted. Me and the whole damn crew tried to break you out, and they died for it, TF quickly replied. We lost Colt, Valak, the Brick, all of them, just trying to save your stubborn ass. You made out alright though, said Graves. You know why? It's because you're a coward, and nothing you'll ever say can change that. TF didn't argue. He lowered his shoulders, and all the will to fight was gone. Graves realized he wasn't acting. That moment, Graves' anger was gone as well. Suddenly, he felt tired. Tired and old. Everything went to hell, and maybe we're both to blame, said TF. I wasn't lying though. We tried to get you out. Doesn't matter. You'll believe what you want anyway. Damn, he's right. I do things my way. Always have. Whenever I pushed it too far, he had my back. He was always the one with the out. But I didn't listen to him that day, and I haven't since. And now, I've killed us both. Graves' thought was interrupted by a bunch of crewmen wrapping a heavy chain around the cannon. Both TF and Graves were lifted to their feet and shoved together back to back. The same chain was being wrapped around their legs. Finally, a lock snapped close, binding them to the chain. Well, I can't get us from this one, said TF. I always knew you'd get me killed. They were standing on the edge of the ship, waiting for their execution. Only at that moment, Graves realized what he should do. He carefully reached into his pocket and pulled out one of TF's playing cards. It was the one TF left at the warehouse. He was planning on shoving it down TF's throat. They checked TF for cards, but not Graves. Graves quickly passed it to TF. He could feel TF hesitate for a second. You two will make a meager tithe, but you'll serve, said Gangplank. Give the bearded lady my regards. Gangplank kicked the cannon over the side. It splashed in the water and the chain started to spool after it. Now at the end, I believe TF. I know he tried to get me out, like he did all those times when we ran together. This time, for once, I've got the out. I can at least give him that. Get out of here. TF started spinning the card through his fingers. Just a moment later, he was gone. TF's chains dropped on the floor and the crowd started shouting. For Graves, it was all worth seeing the look on Gangplank's face. The chain yanked Graves off his feet. He hit the deck hard. In a split of a second, he was dragged over the edge of the ship and he started sinking. Suddenly, TF appeared behind Gangplank, ready to make his move. One of the crewmen noticed him. He looked confused, he couldn't figure out what just happened. But while he was thinking about it, TF punched him right between the eyes. That drew the attention of everyone. Gangplank was the first in line. He slashed his blade at TF's throat, but TF was faster. He dodged under the blade and quickly pulled the prized dagger from Gangplank's belt. He saw the chain still being dragged from the deck. He leapt forward and grabbed the last link of the chain. TF took a deep breath, but a musket shot ripped into his shoulder. He yelled out in pain and he lost his breath. Then he disappeared into the water. For TF, being a riverman that can't swim, this was a nightmare. He started panicking. Sharks and devilfish started circling around him. They tasted his blood. The darkness surrounded them as he sunk even deeper. He knew there was no way out, at least for him. Finally, the cannon hit the bottom and they stopped sinking. TF pulled himself to the bottom and there he was. Graves. He was shaking his head at TF, angry that he came back. TF pulled out the dagger and he started working on Graves' lock, but his hands were shaking. He couldn't open it. Then something happened. He cut his hand and he dropped the dagger. It was slowly falling into the abyss. There it goes. Is it glowing? Above him, bright red and orange everywhere. It's beautiful. So this is what it's like to die. TF laughed and the water rushed in. It's peaceful. Up above the surface, Misfortune, called by her real name Sarah, stared across the harbor from the deck of her ship, the Siren. She enjoyed the destruction she brought to Bilgewater, especially seeing the flaming pieces of Gangplank's ship. What a spectacular ball of rolling flame it was. Entire city witnessed it. Misfortune knew that Gangplank would parade TF and Graves in front of Bilgewater. He liked to use people to maintain control, so she used it to kill him. Gangplank was dead. He was the one who killed Misfortune's parents, and so she enjoyed every second of the show. He's gone, said Raven. It's over. No, replied Misfortune. Not yet. This is just the beginning, she said. I want everyone loyal to him to be brought to answer. I want the heads of his lieutenants mounted on my wall. Burn every bawdy house, tavern and warehouse that bears his mark. I want his corpse. Graves turned towards TF. He wasn't moving. Luckily for Graves, TF managed to pop the lock open. He grabbed TF by the collar and he started kicking towards the surface. As they went up, everything turned bright red. Pieces of metal started sinking around them, with few bodies of Gangplank's crewmen. Finally, they made it up there. But Gangplank's ship was gone. Burning men desperately jumping into water, the smell of sulfur, ash, burning hair and melting skin was in the air. This was hell. Graves found some floating planks and pulled them both on top. For the first time, Graves got a good look at TF, but he wasn't breathing. Graves put his fists on TF's chest and started pumping. Just when he was worried that he was going to break his ribs, TF coughed out water. TF slowly came back to his senses. You stupid son of a bitch, what did you came back for? It took TF a minute to answer. I thought I'd try it out your way, TF muttered. See what being a stubborn ass felt like? Feels awful. Suddenly, one of the crewmen grabbed the floating planks. Graves kicked him off. A fat tentacle wrapped around the crewman's neck and pulled him back into the water. Graves broke off a plank and he started paddling away. He was exhausted, almost reaching his limits. Then he noticed a body floating by, holding something familiar looking. The corpse was holding TF's head. Graves grabbed it and tossed it to TF. He wasn't even a little surprised, like he always knew he would get it back. Now, we just need to find your gun, said TF. What? You itching to get down there? TF turned a funny shade of green. We ain't got time for that. Whoever did this, they left Bilgewater without a boss, Graves said. It's gonna get ugly here. Fast. You're telling me you can live without your gun? TF asks. Maybe not, Graves replied. But I know a really good gunsmith in Piltover. Piltover, TF said, lost in thoughts. Lot of money flowing through there right now, Graves said. Not sure about having you as a partner again. You're even dumber than you used to be, TF answered. That's alright. I'm not sure about having a partner called Twisted Fate. Who the hell came up with that? Well, it's damn sight better than my real name, TF laughed. Fair enough, Graves admitted. Graves grinned. It felt just like the old days. Then he got back his serious look. Just one thing. You ever have mind to leave me holding the bag again? I'll blow your goddamn head off. No questions. TF slowly laughed. Then, after a while, he smiled. You got a deal. Meanwhile, in the streets of Bilgewater, war had been started by spreading 3 simple words. Gangplank is dead. That night, no house was safe. Anyone with any connections to Gangplank was in danger. Across the bay in a quiet back alley, a doctor accepted his new patient. The gold he was handed was plenty to buy his services and assure his silence. The doctor rolled up his patient's sleeve. He had seen many horrific injuries, but even he recoiled when he saw the mangled limb. I'm sorry, I can't save your arm. A bodyguard covered in blood lifted the doctor in the air by his neck. The brute held him for a moment and stared in his eyes. Then he dropped him. The patient stood up and revealed his face. It was Gangplank. Gangplank started looking through every drawer in the room. He was searching for something. Finally, he stopped. Everything must have a purpose, he said, looking at his mutilated arm. He pulled out a bone saw and threw it at the doctor's feet. Cut it off, he said. I've got work to do. And that's where the story of TF and Graves ends. I really hope you enjoyed all 3 parts of this massive story. I had to finish it off quickly because I still have a lot of stories to cover. So if you liked it, feel absolutely free to comment down below and hit the like button. You can also follow me on Twitter and Facebook, and as absolutely always, thank you, come again. Okay, I'm so glad I got this finally done. This has been so much work, you have no idea. Just recording this video took me 4 hours. I'm so glad I finally have more room for lore so I can start working on Aloy and Poppy and pretty much everything you want me to do. So I'm sorry for keeping this outro short, but I really have to go, so see you next time.